Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment in life when the noise around you becomes unbearable. Not because it's too loud, but because it no longer speaks your truth. And in that silence, something extraordinary begins to happen. You finally hear yourself, not the version others created, not the reflection of who you had to be to survive, but the voice that was buried under years of compromise. The real you. Choosing yourself is not an act of arrogance. It's not selfishness. It's self-respect. And it's the beginning of a revolution within. You begin to see how often you said yes when your heart screamed no. How often you gave pieces of yourself to people who didn't know what to do with them. You see the masks you wore, the roles you played, and the quiet exhaustion in your eyes. And then, you finally say it. No more. No more pretending. No more pleasing. No more postponing your peace for someone else's comfort. This isn't about hating the world. It's about refusing to abandon yourself for it. Because for years, you were your last priority. You were the one you ignored. But not anymore. Now, you wake up with a new kind of strength. It's not loud. It doesn't need to prove anything. It simply exists. Unshakable, quiet, and calm. You start walking away from conversations that drain you. You let go of the people who only loved the idea of you but never stayed to understand your soul. You learn to sit with yourself in silence and not feel lonely, but whole. You realize that healing doesn't always look like smiling. Sometimes it looks like grieving everything you had to let go of. But in that grieving, there's beauty, there's freedom, because for the first time, you are not shrinking to fit into a place you've outgrown. You are expanding, rising, and the world may not understand this version of you, but that's okay. You were never born to be understood by everyone. You were born to understand yourself. When you finally choose yourself above all else, you don't become cold. You become clear. Clear about what you allow. Clear about who you are. Clear about the life you're building. And no matter how much the world tries to distract you with noise, you carry a peace that can't be touched. So if you're listening to this, and you're tired, and broken, and unsure, let this be your sign. Let this be the moment where everything shifts. Choose yourself, because when you do, you don't lose anything that was meant to stay. You only lose what was quietly holding you back. And when that weight lifts, you rise differently. You walk with intention. You speak with purpose. You love with wisdom. And for the first time, you are free. Choosing yourself is an act of self-respect, not selfishness. This truth is simple on the surface, yet its depth is often misunderstood. For most of our lives, we are taught that putting others first is a virtue. We are encouraged to accommodate, to adapt, to give more than we take. And while kindness and empathy are beautiful, they become burdens when we sacrifice ourselves endlessly in the name of love, duty, or approval. There comes a point where constantly putting others before yourself becomes a silent form of self-abandonment. It's not noble anymore. It's neglect. You begin to feel it in subtle ways. You laugh when something isn't funny. You say yes when your whole body wants to say no. You smile to keep the peace, even when your heart is in pieces. Every day you make yourself a little smaller, thinking that's what makes you good. But deep down, something starts to ache. That ache is the sound of your soul knocking, reminding you that you were never meant to be forgotten by yourself. Choosing yourself means remembering that your needs matter. Your feelings are valid. Your dreams are not optional. You don't exist to be someone else's background character. You are not here just to support others while you fall apart quietly in the background. Choosing yourself doesn't mean you stop loving people. It means you stop loving them at the cost of yourself. It means your boundaries are no longer negotiable just because someone else is uncomfortable with them. The world often praises selflessness, but rarely does it praise the courage it takes to say, "I matter too." That kind of courage is quiet. It doesn't shout or demand attention. It shows up when you walk away from situations that no longer feel right, even when you don't have a backup plan. It shows up when you take time to rest, not because you're lazy, but because you're finally listening to your body. It shows up when you tell someone no without explaining or apologizing, because you've realized that your peace is a good enough reason. People might not understand when you start choosing yourself. They might call you distant, selfish, cold, or even ungrateful. But the truth is, their reactions are not about you. They're about what they no longer get from you. The version of you that always showed up, even when you were running on empty, is no longer available. And that can be uncomfortable for them. But for you, it's a rebirth. It's the moment you stop waiting to be chosen and start choosing yourself instead. For years, you may have looked outward for approval, for permission, for validation. You asked others if it was okay to take a break, okay to say no, okay to want more. You dimmed your light to make others comfortable, thinking that being loved meant being less. But now, you are starting to understand that your light was never meant to be hidden. It was meant to shine, even if it makes others squint. Respecting yourself means learning to sit with your own voice, to listen to what it's been trying to tell you all along. That voice might sound unfamiliar at first. It might be shaky, uncertain, or soft. But the more you choose to hear it, the stronger it becomes. Eventually, it becomes the only voice you trust. And from that place of trust, your life begins to change. You no longer ask for scraps of love. You no longer tolerate chaos in the name of connection. You no longer chase people who treat you like an option. You start to build a home within yourself, one where you feel safe, supported, and seen. You don't wait for someone else to give you what you've always had the power to give yourself: attention, validation, care, protection. You become your own sanctuary. You realize that you don't need to prove your worth by what you do for others. Your worth is intrinsic. It's not up for negotiation. And when you move through life with that truth, you become grounded in a way that no rejection, no loss, no misunderstanding can shake. Choosing yourself means honoring your limits without guilt. It means trusting your instincts without needing to explain them. It means walking away from what's toxic, even when it's wrapped in memories and nostalgia. It means finally becoming the person you needed when you were younger. Not perfect, not always strong, but present, honest, real, and whole. True strength is found in quiet clarity and inner peace. It is not in how loud you speak, how hard you fight, or how visibly you struggle. Strength does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers. It shows itself in the calm decision to walk away from what no longer aligns with your values. It's the stillness you carry within when the world around you is spinning with noise, conflict, and confusion. True strength is the ability to remain centered even when everything around you tries to pull you away from yourself. Clarity doesn't come from chaos. It comes from silence, from reflection, from sitting with your thoughts long enough to understand them instead of running from them. When you begin to develop inner clarity, you stop reacting to life and start responding. You no longer speak just to be heard or act just to prove your worth. You begin to see that the most powerful movements often come from a place of stillness. When you are clear within, you can walk into any room and not feel the need to explain yourself. You don't beg to be seen because you see yourself. You don't fear being misunderstood because you are no longer at war with your own voice. That's where peace comes in. Peace is not just the absence of conflict, it's the presence of stability. It's what happens when you stop trying to control everything and start trusting that your calm is a kind of power. You stop chasing chaos disguised as passion. You stop confusing noise for significance. You let people leave if they must. You let silence speak when words aren't needed. You stop rushing to fix what doesn't feel right, and instead you observe. You watch, you learn, and then you act not out of panic but from purpose. It's easy to appear strong when everything is going well. But the real test is how you carry yourself when things fall apart. Do you collapse? Do you lash out? Or do you return to your breath, gather your thoughts, and choose your response with intention? Inner peace gives you that space, that pause, that clarity between stimulus and reaction. And in that space lies your greatest strength, the ability to choose not from fear or ego, but from wisdom. When you live in that state, your presence changes. People feel it. You no longer need to dominate conversations or prove your intelligence. Your confidence is not rooted in comparison. It's quiet, but unmistakable. It comes from knowing who you are, what you stand for, and what you will no longer accept in your life. You don't seek validation because you are already rooted in your truth. And nothing is stronger than a person who is aligned with their truth. You stop allowing external things to shake your foundation. You stop basing your mood on how others treat you, or what someone said, or what didn't go your way. Instead, you look inward. You ask, what am I feeling? What does this teach me? What do I need to let go of? This isn't weakness, it's discipline. The discipline to be still. The discipline to be thoughtful. The discipline to feel deeply but not be ruled by emotion. This kind of strength does not impress everyone. It doesn't always get recognized. It doesn't come with applause or admiration, but it brings something more valuable than attention. It brings peace of mind. It allows you to sleep without regret, to speak without harming, to love without clinging, to lead without dominating. It allows you to live without carrying the weight of every opinion, every judgment, every mistake. The people who are truly strong are not always the loudest in the room. They are often the ones listening carefully, watching quietly, understanding deeply. They aren't quick to argue, not because they can't defend themselves, but because they no longer feel the need to. They know their energy is sacred, and they won't waste it proving a point to someone determined not to understand. They would rather keep their peace than win a meaningless battle. And when the storms of life come, and they always do, these people bend but they don't break. They may stumble but they do not shatter, because their strength is not built on ego. It's not fragile. It's built on clarity, patience, and the deep understanding that not everything requires a reaction. Not everything needs to be fought. Some things are better left alone. Some victories are silent, and the greatest battles are often won within. Healing often requires letting go of what once felt familiar. This is one of the most difficult truths we encounter on the path to growth. We naturally hold on to what we know, people, patterns, places, memories, because even pain can feel like comfort when it becomes routine. Familiarity creates a sense of safety, even when it harms us. Letting go of that can feel like standing at the edge of a cliff with no certainty of what lies beyond. But healing demands that risk. It asks us to release what no longer serves our well-being, even when it once felt like it defined us. It's not just about moving on. It's about detaching from identities we built around our wounds. When you've lived in survival mode for too long, peace can feel strange. You start to question it. You look for problems even when there aren't any, because your nervous system has been trained to expect instability. That's why healing is not just a process of becoming better. It's also a process of unlearning. Unlearning the habits that kept you stuck. Unlearning the beliefs that told you your worth was tied to someone else's approval. Unlearning the need to carry burdens that were never yours to hold. Letting go means facing the pain directly instead of covering it with distractions. It means sitting with the emptiness that arises when you finally walk away from what's been weighing you down. It might be a relationship, a career, a story you've told yourself for years. Whatever it is, the act of releasing it is an act of self-honor. You begin to see that the space you're creating by letting go is not a loss. It's a clearing, a sacred emptiness where something healthier can grow. But at first, it feels like grief. It feels like something important is dying. And in many ways, it is. Parts of you must die for other parts to be born. The version of you that tolerated disrespect. The version that stayed quiet to avoid conflict. The version that made excuses for others while neglecting your own needs. These parts served a purpose, but they are no longer needed. Holding on to them only keeps you stuck in cycles that repeat the same pain with different faces. True healing asks you to release these versions of yourself with love and gratitude, not shame. You are not broken for outgrowing what you once held dear. You are evolving. There's a loneliness that often comes with healing, because as you grow, you start to see more clearly. The conversations you once enjoyed may feel shallow. The places you used to go might lose their appeal. The people you surrounded yourself with may no longer feel aligned. This disconnection isn't a sign that something is wrong. It's a sign that something is changing. You're stepping into a new version of yourself that requires new energy, new boundaries, and new choices. But in between who you were and who you are becoming, there is an uncomfortable space. A space filled with silence, uncertainty, and sometimes even regret. That's where many people turn back. Not because they aren't capable of healing, but because they are afraid of what it demands. Healing asks you to face yourself without filters, to confront the pain without numbing it, to take responsibility for your part in your suffering without drowning in guilt. It asks you to let go of the illusions you created to protect yourself and to meet your reality with honesty. This is not easy. It's messy. It's raw. But it is necessary. What you begin to discover in this process is a new kind of strength. A strength that doesn't come from pretending to be okay, but from learning how to truly be okay without pretending. You start to trust your own presence. You learn to comfort yourself. You understand that peace is not something given by others, it's something built within. And every time you choose to let go of something harmful, you are reinforcing that peace. You are telling yourself, I deserve better than this. I am no longer willing to settle for what hurts, even if it feels familiar. Letting go is not a betrayal of your past. It's a commitment to your future. It's choosing your growth over your comfort. It's accepting that some chapters must close for the story to continue. You can honor what once was without dragging it into what is. You can forgive without forgetting who you are. You can love from a distance. You can release with compassion. And you can move forward, not because everything is resolved, but because you are finally ready to heal. When you stop shrinking, you start rising. It begins in the smallest of moments, when you speak your truth instead of staying silent, when you hold your ground instead of folding to pressure, when you choose not to dim your light for the comfort of others. These choices may seem minor, almost invisible to the outside world, but inside, something profound begins to shift. You start reclaiming the parts of yourself you once hid. You start standing taller, not with arrogance, but with quiet dignity. Shrinking often happens without us even realizing it. It's the smile you fake to keep things easy. It's the dream you push aside because you were told it was too big. It's the silence you keep because speaking up once cost you something important. Over time, these compromises accumulate. They chip away at your sense of self. You learn to take up less space, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. And yet, deep inside, there remains a quiet resistance, a part of you that refuses to be silenced completely, a part that waits for the day you will no longer choose fear over freedom. That day arrives not through a grand transformation, but through consistent, small acts of courage. You begin to say no when it matters. You start to ask for what you need without apologizing. You stop pretending to agree when your heart says otherwise. These acts are not loud. They don't always feel powerful at the moment. In fact, they might feel terrifying, but they are the foundation of your rising. Each time you choose yourself, you rebuild a part of the self you once abandoned. Rising doesn't mean becoming someone else. It means returning to who you were before the world convinced you to shrink. It's not about proving your worth. It's about remembering it. You don't rise by demanding attention. You rise by embodying your truth. You walk differently. You speak with intention. You no longer chase validation because you understand that your value doesn't depend on anyone's permission to exist fully. As you rise, you start to notice how much you tolerated to be accepted. The spaces you stayed in, not because they felt right, but because they were familiar. The people you held on to, not because they lifted you, but because you feared the emptiness their absence would leave. You begin to recognize that you outgrew certain roles long ago, yet you kept playing them out of habit, guilt, or fear of being alone. Letting go of these patterns is not a betrayal of your past. It's a commitment to your growth. It's not easy to rise when the world has trained you to be small. When you've been taught that humility means silence, that strength means endurance, that love means self-sacrifice. But true humility is not self-erasure. True strength is not staying in what wounds you, and true love never asks you to abandon yourself. As you begin to internalize this, the rise becomes natural. You no longer shrink to fit someone else's story. You start writing your own. You also learn that not everyone will celebrate your rising. Some people will be uncomfortable with your new boundaries. Some will miss the version of you who always said yes, who never questioned, who made life easier for them. And that's okay. Your rising is not for them. It's for the version of you who once stayed silent when you wanted to scream. For the version who thought your worth depended on how useful you were to others. For the version who cried quietly in the dark, wondering if you were enough. As you rise, you build new standards not just for how others treat you, but for how you treat yourself. You stop being the one who constantly fixes, who always gives more, who carries burdens that were never yours. You learn to rest, to say no, to pause. You learn to hold space for your emotions without judgment. You learn that you don't have to earn your right to exist fully and freely. And somewhere in the process, you begin to feel free, not because everything is perfect, but because you are no longer denying your own presence. You're no longer hiding behind politeness, fear, or the need to be liked. You're showing up in your own life, fully, unapologetically, and honestly. You're expanding into who you were always meant to be. You're rising not above others, but into yourself, into your truth, into your power. When you choose yourself, you stop asking for permission to exist as you are. You stop waiting for others to validate your choices, your desires, your identity. The approval you once craved begins to lose its grip. The praise that used to feel like oxygen now feels optional. There is something deeply liberating about realizing that you no longer need someone else to tell you that you are enough. You start to stand firmly on your own ground, not because it's always easy, but because it's finally real. And in that reality, something inside you shifts. You become less concerned with being liked and more focused on being true. You used to shape yourself like water, molding your presence to fit into other people's containers. You would shrink your dreams so others wouldn't feel small. You would soften your voice so others wouldn't feel challenged. You would carry the emotional weight of situations you didn't create, just to keep the peace. But eventually, you realize that peace at the expense of your own well-being is not peace, it's performance. And choosing yourself means putting down that performance. It means saying, "This is who I am, and I won't apologize for existing." This doesn't make you selfish. It makes you conscious. Conscious of the fact that you can love others and still choose yourself. That you can care without self-sacrifice. That you can listen without absorbing. For so long, you were taught that putting yourself first was wrong. That it was selfish to say no, or to walk away, or to want more. But there is a difference between selfishness and self-awareness. The first takes from others. The second protects your inner space. You start to realize that boundaries are not walls, they're doors. They don't shut people out. They allow the right ones in. People who respect your space, your time, your energy. People who don't just tolerate you, but honor you. And when you choose yourself, you stop begging for crumbs of affection. You stop explaining your worth. You stop settling for being tolerated when you deserve to be appreciated. You know now that your presence is not something to be earned. It's something to be received with care. You also begin to trust yourself more. You trust your intuition, even when others question it. You trust your feelings, even when they're inconvenient. You trust your voice, even when it trembles. This inner trust becomes your compass. You no longer look outward for answers to questions that live within you. You start to ask yourself first. You begin to build a relationship with your inner world, one that is honest, nurturing, and firm. You become your own advocate, your own healer, your own protector. Choosing yourself also means accepting your complexity. You are not one thing. You are joy and pain, light and shadow, strength and vulnerability. You don't try to simplify yourself to make others comfortable. You embrace your contradictions, knowing they don't make you weak, they make you whole. You allow yourself to feel deeply, to change your mind, to grow without explanation. You give yourself permission to evolve, to let go of identities that no longer fit, to step into the unknown, not because it's certain, but because it's necessary. There's a kind of power that comes when you choose yourself, and it's not loud. It doesn't come from shouting or proving. It comes from presence, from showing up fully, from knowing you belong in any space you choose to be in, not because someone invited you, but because you brought yourself there with intention. And in this presence, people feel something different. They sense the depth. They sense the clarity. They sense the boundary between performance and authenticity. You stop being controlled by guilt. You stop making decisions based on what others expect of you. You no longer measure your life by other people's timelines or opinions. Instead, you tune into your own rhythm. You learn when to pause, when to act, when to rest, when to rise. You take responsibility for your healing, your growth, your path. You no longer hand over your power to those who misuse it. You reclaim your time, your focus, your energy. And in doing so, you realize that choosing yourself was never about being against anyone else. It was about finally being for yourself, for your peace, for your potential, for your truth. You understand that you are not here to prove anything. You are here to live deeply and truthfully. And that kind of life cannot be built on the foundation of people-pleasing, avoidance, or fear. It must be built from the inside out with courage, clarity, and the unwavering decision to honor who you are becoming.